Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Bet Right Sports Betting Podcast presented by the Six Pack Coverage Media Network. It's your host, Jeff Farrell, here with your co-host, Andrew Tanzi. We are wrapping up the NFC this week with the NFC West. Seahawks, Cardinals, 49ers, and Rams. This will conclude our breakdown of the NFC for our season previews. Then next week, we'll be back with the AFC. So, Rue, how we doing? Ready to wrap up the NFC here?
Yeah, another Sunday night here, July 24th. So I think that puts us about 7 Sundays out from the first Sunday of NFL season. So
it's too far to count for me.
Yeah,
we're getting closer.
Yeah, so it feels like we're getting closer, but it's still so far away.
Yes. So NFC West as a whole, probably the best division in the NFC. I think there's some, teams up top like the Rams and Niners are, I think, 2 of the top 4 teams that come out of the NFC. So it's a bit of a top heavy division. The cross matches for this division are the NFC South. So not too tough there. And then the AFC West, obviously the division that no one wants to play. So that makes a lot of the schedules are pretty tough when they're ranked against the rest of the league. Did you have any takes on the NFC West overall, or are you ready to dive into the reigning Super Bowl champs?
Yeah, playing the AFC West was definitely the one that I wanted to hit on because it makes it a lot tougher to take overs when you're playing a division that all 4 teams you could potentially lose to, and you can't really guarantee a win. The NFC South obviously has Bucs and Saints, which are 2 tougher games, but for a team like the Rams, you feel pretty good that they're going to take care of business against the Falcons and the Panthers. So it makes it tough when you're playing one of those divisions that there's really no guaranteed win. So it's safe to say I don't really have many overs in this division.
I don't think I have any. I think I have 2 unders and then a question mark and a maybe under. So.
Okay.
We'll get into it here, not to spoil too much. But all right, so let's talk about the LA Rams. Obviously won the Super Bowl last year. Win total is 10.5 over and under, both minus 110 each way, plus 125 to win the NFC West. Then I have them around 11-1 to repeat as Super Bowl champions. Off season, they lost left tackle Andrew Whitworth, lost Von Miller, Robert Woods, and then the status of Odell Beckham Jr. is still in question. He's not officially signed, although Sean McVay did say he has no choice but to come back and sign after crashing McVay's wedding. So we'll see what happens there. Regardless, he's obviously going to be out until, I would say, at least like early November. Additions to this team, they did add Allen Robinson to kind of fill into that wide receiver 2 role, and then linebacker Bobby Wagner from the Seahawks, who we'll talk about in a little bit. And they didn't draft anybody because the Rams just trade all the draft picks, so no real changes there. So what are your thoughts on the Rams overall? I think that they're, pretty similar roster to last year. They lost a few guys, added a few guys, but they're pretty much rolling back the same team that won the Super Bowl last year. Any reason to think that they won't have similar success this season?
No, and at first glance, the 10.5 wins does seem a bit low, but then when you do dive into the schedule and you see those AFC West matchups, it makes it tough to take the over there. So I was leaning towards taking them to win the division. I think they are a much better team than the Cardinals. I don't think the 49ers win the division with Trey Lance in his first year as a starter. And so I think there's some value there getting them around that plus 125 number. Bobby Wagner on the defensive side of the ball is huge for me. Just another piece. They were obviously, this defense carried them through portions of the season last year. The offense averaged 27 points per game last year, but they went through some spurts throughout the season where they were really struggling. Stafford was turning the ball over a ton. So to add Bobby Wagner with arguably the best corner in football and the best defensive lineman in football. So now you just have a superstar at every level of that defense, which I think is huge. So I do like the addition of Allen Robinson. I think a lot of people wrote him off after last season, but to me, I think he's still an extremely talented wide receiver. I'm not going to write him off based off what I saw last year with Justin Fields and Andy Dalton in that disastrous offense. So I think he still has some juice left, and obviously you pair him with Kupp and, like you said, possibly an Odell Beckham. So I think it's going to be a similar season to last year. I think there's going to be some ebbs and flows on the offensive side of the ball. It's the nature of football, but I think this defense is good enough. The one key is going to be staying healthy on the defensive side, though. So I will say the defensive line, as good as it is, there's not a ton of depth. So when the starting unit's out there, they're a top 3, top 5 unit, third most sacks last year, 5th fewest rush yards allowed, but there really isn't a ton of depth.
I think that's kind of like their whole team. Like they're just really a stars and scrubs built roster. Like I think if they sustain injuries to like any number of positions, I think they could be in a lot of trouble. Like I don't think they have a lot of depth at any of these positions.
Yeah, and same thing with the secondary. You take Ramsey out of the mix in that secondary,
it changes everything.
It is not. I mean, if he misses a couple games, I'm going to be looking to fade this team through the air, whether it's taking them the spread of the opposing team or taking props for receivers on the other team or quarterbacks, because this secondary becomes arguably bottom half of the league if Ramsey goes out. So yeah, no play for me on them. I think if I were to play something, though, it would be on them to win the division.
Okay, I think that's fair. I'm also with you. I don't have a play either way. I think they have the second toughest schedule right now based on Vegas win totals, but so I think that speaks to the point that you were saying. That's definitely a tough schedule. So I think 10.5 makes sense. I think Allen Robinson's going to be a big key to this offense on what kind of version of him we're getting. We've obviously seen him put up 1,400 yards and 14 touchdowns with Blake Bortles. He had back-to-back 1,100 yard seasons with Mitch Trubisky. But like last season, like I know you just said that you think he's going to be due for a bounce back year, but like, is there a chance that Allen Robinson is just kind of like done? Like, I know that people want to look at like Fields and Foles and Dalton and say that, the quarterback play just wasn't there. But like, we've seen Robinson put up big numbers with similar quarterbacks, and Darnell Mooney had 81 catches for 1,055 yards on the same team. Like, is there a chance that Robinson just isn't creating enough separation and has lost a step at this point in his career? I mean, he's only 28 years old, but like, I'm having a tough time explaining what happened last season exactly with him. Like a starting receiver that had 410 yards, like that's not even possible. He missed a couple games, but like, my God, dude, like it's like 30 yards a game.
It seemed, and I don't necessarily think he's going to have a bounce back. He certainly could. It's more me just, I'm not writing him off. I'm not saying his career. He's 28 years old. He's not young. He's not old. He's 28 years old. There's no reason I can say you should be able to say he's not physically capable. And I think part of it last year was somewhat of a quitting mindset on his part.
Done with Matt Nagy and just didn't care anymore. Done with
Nagy. It was kind of just he wasn't getting the ball to start the season. He wasn't really involved in the offense. So it makes sense for him to get out of Chicago. I definitely think in this offense, I think McVay's going to be able to utilize him properly. So and with Cooper Kupp on the other side, he's no longer going to be drawing all the attention like he was last year. So I think there's potential he could be a big key for the offense.
So are you more of a wait and see, or like early in the season, if his prop lines are like high 50s, would you be looking at the over, or is it more like a wait and see and watch him for a few games?
I think if I got something in the low 50s week 1 against the Bills, you have
could definitely turn into a shootout.
You have Tre'Davious White out for the Bills in week 1, so you're going to be getting potentially a number 3 corner guarding him, and like you just said, it could end up being a shootout type game. So,
okay, be a spot to look at.
I do have a season-long prop, though, I wanted to run by you.
All right, let's hear it. I don't have anything on the Rams.
A Cam Akers under 950.5 rushing yards. He'd need to average 56 yards per game to hit the over. He obviously came back late in the season from that Achilles injury. He only played 1 regular season game last year, but for some reason was handed the keys of the backfield in the playoffs and basically became the number 1 running back. And all he did was rush 67 times for 172 yards. That's 2.6 yards per carry. And it wasn't just, it's not, he looked bad. It wasn't just, it wasn't Quince. It wasn't just bad O-line play. Obviously you're playing against you played against the Bucs in the playoffs. You played some good teams, but
Niners,
he didn't look good. Yeah. And Darrell Henderson's still there. Now, obviously, when Akers came back, he was the number 1. But what I saw last year, 56 rush yards per game, averaging against some tougher defenses on the schedule. You are playing the 49ers twice still, who are going to have a tough defense. The Bills in week 1 are going to have a tough run day. You are playing the Bucs, so Green Bay should have a good defense. So it's not that easy of a schedule. Obviously, you have some cupcake teams on there, but I do like Cam Akers under 950.5 rush yards. And look, he only played for a few games at the end of last season, including the playoffs. And now we're going to expect how much of a workload is he going to be getting on a weekly basis over a 17-game season? I got to imagine as quick as he came back from the Achilles injury, it's still going to be a full season coming off a very bad injury.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. At 950, I think I'm okay with the under. I guess my only concerns would be like McVay just showed like an insane, like it didn't even make sense, like the amount of loyalty that they seemed to have to him in the playoffs last year. Like I felt like they were almost costing themselves games by giving this guy the ball. And so it's just like I think rationally it makes sense that they would give him and Darrell Henderson kind of a split workload, but McVay's always kind of leaned towards a one running back system. So I'm just worried that he's going to stick to Akers again this season for some reason. So I think the play makes sense, but I do think with a full off season, McVay could just lean on him for as much as he can handle, and maybe he can handle it and just get enough carries and get his way there by volume alone.
Yeah, then that's definitely the one concern. But Henderson was good last year. He
gets hurt himself a bunch too, but yeah, he was solid when he was healthy.
So yeah, it's something to consider. It just kind of depends on where you are. Like you said, how much volume is he going to get? Because yeah, he could absolutely, if he's the guy getting 15 to 20 carries per game every game, he's going to get there based on volume alone. He could probably average 3.8 yards per carry and get there. So it kind of just depends on where you weigh in on that.
Yeah. All right. I think that was all I had to say on the Rams. You got anything else?
Nope.
All right, let's move on to the San Francisco 49ers. Over under here is 9.5 or 10, depending on where you're looking. If you're at 10, the minus 120 is to the under, so a little bit shaded there. Minus 225 to make the playoffs and plus 200 to win the NFC West. No real additions to this team that I'm seeing in my research. They did have a couple of losses. Obviously, the change at quarterback, at least that we're expecting it to be Trey Lance instead of Jimmy Garoppolo. Garoppolo's still on the roster, but it looks like they're trying to trade him. Then they lost center Alex Mack, their safety Tart, and then they did draft a linebacker in the second round, and then another running back, Tyrion Davis-Price, because you got to have 7 active running backs on the active roster. Where are you at here with Trey Lance taking the reins in San Francisco and what's obviously been a very good team and a very successful team? Do you think that he can come in and take them to the next level, or is this kind of a step in the wrong direction?
I kind of had a roller coaster year with the 49ers. So they were getting a ton of off-season love last year, and I did not like them heading into the season. And they started off 2-4, but by the end of the season, both of us, you and I were both.
They were our team.
They were our team. We were riding them every week. They fought their way into the playoffs. We both had them against Green Bay, and they pulled it out. So yeah, it was
underdogs against the Cowboys.
Oh, yeah, man. So we were riding them for some. We had some good wins with them, and I just, for the life of me, I can't understand. And I've talked bad about Jimmy G in the past, and I don't think he's a top tier guy, but he has proven that in this system with this team, he can win. His 2 full years that he stayed healthy, he went to a Super Bowl and went to a conference championship. And for some reason, they use a high draft pick on Trey Lance last year. And after going to a conference championship, they just want to kick Garoppolo out the door. And for the life of me, I just can't understand it. So
how about you help him out? How about you draft a receiver or draft someone to help the team? And then you don't need to take a quarterback. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, and the pieces are there. It's not like you're saying help them. I mean, they have Samuel, they have.
No, but I'm saying if you use that pick on Trey Lance, you get a top 10 player, you get a star cornerback, you get a wide receiver for him, someone to help him out. You don't draft a quarterback, and they traded up to get him. They also used other assets.
Yeah. So that being said, I bet they're under 10 wins. 10 just feels like the ceiling for me for this team. They didn't really do anything to get better. I think with Lance, they get worse. There's just such a lack of experience with Trey Lance. The guy played 17 games in college and at North Dakota State. So it's not like he started 10 games at an SEC school playing in these high pressure games in these hostile environments. So he started 2 games last year for the 49ers. They went 1-1. They scored only 10 points in a loss to Arizona, 23 in a win over Houston, and he had 59% completion percentage, 441 yards, 2 TDs, 2 interceptions over that span. So it's really just over the course of a season, he hasn't had to go into these hostile environments. Like some of the places they're playing this year, they're going to, let's see, they're going to Denver. They're going to the Rams,
Seattle, at the Raiders.
Okay, so you could argue their road games aren't too tough.
Looking Panthers, at their schedule. Falcons, Rams. Yeah, they're not too bad.
But still, Trey Lance, he's an athletic freak. He can run the ball, but do you trust him to make throws in pressure situations and fourth quarter drives?
I mean, not right now. Maybe we will.
That's what I'm saying. So
yeah.
I don't. So I just need to fade the team based on that. 10 wins is, if they win 10 wins or 10 games, that's a good season for Lance, and that feels like the ceiling. So to me, I'm looking at it as I'm either getting a push or a win here, because I don't see them going over 10. They do have a couple cupcake games to start the season at Chicago and versus the Seahawks. So maybe you get Lance a little bit of confidence, but I just think with Lance, they do have potential to lose to an inferior team or two like that, because he only started 2 games last year. So he hasn't really gotten those rookie games out of his system where he's throwing. We saw it from Lawrence and Fields and all these guys last year, where you are throwing 3 or 4 interceptions in a game. And if it comes against one of these teams like the Falcons or Panthers, you don't necessarily recover just because you're the better team. So I think they're just taking a step back, putting him at quarterback, and then a couple losses on the offensive line in the interior with Alex Mack and Laken Tomlinson, I think could hurt on the inside in the running game a bit. But defensively, I think it's kind of similar to last year. They're going to
be really good again on defense.
So they have an average secondary, and there was times that secondary definitely hurt them, but they're great against the run. They have a great defensive line. So I think it'll be similar on that side of the ball. So I don't expect any issues there. It's just with Lance at quarterback, I can't see this team getting over 10 wins.
Yeah, I feel like for me, I think this is a team that I would probably just play extreme outcomes on one way or the other. Honestly, you can make a case either way. Like if I had to bet their win total, I would lean towards the under, just because I'm with you. I think if I had to make a prediction, I would say Trey Lance is a downgrade over Jimmy G. But look, we love the roster. We love the coaching staff. I think it all comes down to how good Trey Lance is. And I just think like I could see anywhere from like 7. I know you said you feel like the ceiling is 10. Like I see no reason this team couldn't win 12 or 13 games if Trey Lance is as good as they think he could be. And like a 6-win spread. Like I look at a team like the Seahawks, I'm like, okay, they'll win between like 3 and 6 games. Like there's not that much variance there. I think with the Niners, you either bet them to I would bet them to miss the playoffs at like plus 180, something like that, or I'm betting them to win the NFC at 8-1 or something like that. If I think Trey Lance really hits, I'd kind of just play the extreme outcomes and think if Trey Lance is awesome, this team can win the Super Bowl, no doubt. If Trey Lance stinks, they're going to really struggle. As good as their run game is, you can't have a quarterback that's going to turn the ball over a bunch of times and expect to win games. So I think if he stinks, they're going to win 7 or 8 games and miss the playoffs.
They have a bye week in week 9 and then come off and play 5 straight home games. That's a pretty favorable schedule. I mean, they're bouncing around a little bit in the beginning of the season, but on the back half of the year to have 5 straight home games. So 1, 2.
Where are you seeing that? No, week 11, they're at the Cardinals.
Mine says home against the Cardinals on
really
Monday Night Football.
Mine says at the Cardinals, and then mine says home against the Cardinals week 18.
Oh, mine says home for both games. All right, I'm looking at ESPN. I should have known better than to look at ESPN's schedule. All right, disregard.
So they may or may not have 5 straight home games.
They are not playing the Cardinals twice at home. I can guarantee that.
I wouldn't think so.
Okay.
Yeah, I do think the point that you said, starting the season at the Bears and home against the Seahawks, like that's really advantageous, especially just thinking that it's Trey Lance. It's not his first 2 starts of his career, but like really letting him get his feet wet and getting some reps in before you have to face some good teams, which they get later in the season. I think that'll definitely help them.
Will you be comfortable going into week 1 using the 49ers in a teaser? Because they're currently at 8.5-point favorites over the Bears. Or will it be a stay? We both think
no, they're 6.5. I thought they were under a touchdown.
I thought they were 8.5. We both think the Bears are going to be one of the worst teams in the league.
I know. It's so hard to say no because the Bears are just so bad, but it's also like, how can I be confident?
They're 6.5. You're right.
I mean, they'll probably be 8.5, honestly, by the time we get to week 1.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like putting them in like a money line parlay right now, would you do that?
Yeah, I would. It doesn't feel like last season we were looking at the Niners. What were they? I think they were 8.5-point favorites against the Lions in week 1, and they went up like 41-17. They barely won the game. Yeah, it feels like that all over again. So yeah, I think I would, just based on the talent level on this roster compared to the Bears. Like I don't even think Trey Lance has to be remotely good in that game for them to get a comfortable win. So I'd have a hard time not. Okay.
Yeah, they pretty much outclassed the Bears in every aspect of the game, but I just
they could run the ball 55 times in a row, and I still think they would beat the Bears by at least a field goal.
Yeah. All right, so 49ers or Saints, a team we previously talked about.
To do what?
Just better team.
Better team, I would go with the Niners.
Okay.
Like if I'm betting a win total, I'd rather bet the Saints over. But if I'm betting like a team to win the NFC or who I think is better, definitely the Niners.
Okay. All right.
Would you I guess we'll have to wait and see when we get there. I was gonna say, would you like the Niners again this year in the playoffs to make a run if they get it as a wild card team again?
Yeah, it's tough to say without seeing Lance.
Yeah, you have to see Trey Lance this season and see if they could be that team again.
Do I want to take Lance if they get in as a wild card team going to Tampa Bay or going to Green Bay or Minnesota or something? No, I don't. Notice how I threw Minnesota.
Tough ask. Going to Minnesota. I didn't even catch that. Could have just rolled with it. Yeah, that's what's gonna happen. All right. Anything left to say on the Niners?
No.
All right. Moving on to the Arizona Cardinals. Win total has been bet down a little bit. We're at 8.5 right now, minus 110 to both ways. They are plus money, plus 115 to make the playoffs, and you can get plus 400 on them to win the NFC West. Off-season acquisitions, they got traded for Hollywood Brown from the Ravens, also drafted a tight end, Trey McBride, no other real notable draft picks. A lot of guys lost this offseason. Obviously, Nuke Hopkins going to be suspended for the first 6 games. They also lost Chase Edmonds out of the backfield. Wide receiver Christian Kirk signed with the Jaguars, and then Chandler Jones, Jordan Hicks, and cornerback Robert Alford all leave on this defense. So a lot of players missing here. Kyler Murray obviously just signed his big extension, so he's going to be there for the next 5 or 6 years. Where are you at here with the Cardinals? I'm kind of liking, the more I dig into it, I was doing some more work today. I think I really, really like this team's under, and I may even like their alt unders. Are you in on fading the Cardinals here, or do you have a different take on them?
So I would, if I were betting the over under, I would bet the under, but it's tough. It was a weird. So last year they started out 7-0. Murray was playing like an MVP. They looked like one of the best teams in the league, and then 4-6 over the back half of last season. So Murray's an explosive player. They have some weapons on offense, especially when Hopkins does come back. So I think they're going to win games just because of that. Like, Murray's. I don't love Murray, but he's too good of a quarterback. I don't see them losing or winning 5 or 6 games. So I think it'll be close if you take the under. I could see them. I could see it coming down to the last couple weeks of the season. Now, the defense is, I think, where you win this bet, the under bet, because
they lost a lot of good pieces on an already, like, they were fine last year, but they weren't a great defense. I have some concerns about their defense.
So it has disaster potential. And when you hear this, so it was similar to the Cowboys, and the Cowboys more so, but they benefited from a lot of turnovers last year. The Cardinals recovered a league high 14 fumbles last season and had 13 interceptions. So if the turnovers aren't there, I think this defense does struggle. They allowed 6.7 yards per pass. Really no upgrades in the secondary this year. They were 12th in adjusted sack rate, 13th in pass rush win rate, and now you're losing your best pass rusher in Chandler Jones.
J.J. Watt's a year older. I mean,
J.J. Watt's going to make it through 3 weeks and then get hurt.
Yeah.
So, and they were really able to navigate a pretty tough schedule last year at the start of that season. And they're going to have to do the same thing this year.
Yes.
First 3 games of the year, they're playing Chiefs, Raiders, and Rams. So it's pretty tough to make a case for the over here. I would definitely lean the under, but it's tough because I think it's tough to fade Murray because he is in that, not top. I don't put him as like a top 10 guy, but maybe top 12 in the league. And they're going to win games. Because I think
we can both agree he's better than Kirk Cousins, though, right?
No.
That's just stuff. We don't need to go there. He's better than Kirk Cousins.
So you look at the schedule. So even they lost to someone. They lost to the Bears last year, didn't they?
Who loses to the Bears?
They might have.
The middle of I thought the Bears had all their wins in like the first 3 weeks of the season.
Yeah, you could be right. Let's see.
I don't remember who they. All I remember is they lost to the Packers on that Monday.
They lost to the Lions. That was their bad loss. Well, they actually lost to the Lions and the Panthers last year.
So they were really just imploding down the stretch.
They lost to the Panthers at home. So you look at it this year, like I said, 3 tough games to start the year. Then you got to go to Carolina, which that to me almost seems like a trap game. So you're bouncing back and forth. You're home against Kansas City, at Vegas, back home against the Rams. Then you're going to Carolina. So that's kind of a tougher game. And that's the week before
Eagles, Seahawks, Saints, Vikings. Okay, so I really like the under here. I think you're looking at like a 1-2 start probably. And honestly, through 8 games, like they could easily be 3-5. they're probably going to be favorites in 2 of their first 8 games. And like, there's a lot of playoff teams in there. Like we just mentioned, Rams, Chiefs, Saints, Eagles, Vikings are right on that cusp. So I just think that the team got worse in the offseason. Even when DeAndre Hopkins does come back, like they lose Christian Kirk, replace him with Hollywood Brown. Okay. But I just don't think Hopkins is the same player that he was. Even when you watched him last year, like I just think he really struggled to create separation, averaged a career low outside of his rookie year. I think it was like 54 yards per game or something. He's now 30 years old. He's no longer taking steroids, which certainly isn't going to help. Well, honestly, like, look, if he did that last season on whatever performance, drugs
what was
it?
Now he's not. I don't know what it was.
Something illegal. I mean, I'm sure it helps you in some way. I don't know. I'm sure he's gonna say like, "Oh, it was some like hair product or something that I got into my bloodstream, or someone peed on me." I don't know what these guys make up.
Yeah, they come up with everything. I had no idea how this got in my system.
My girlfriend took this thing and then she spit into my drink, and then I inhaled it. And it's like, oh my god, dude! Like, where do you even come up?
Just own up to it.
Yeah, honestly, no one ever just comes out and says like, "Yeah, I did it."
Yeah.
Anyway, when I go through their schedule, I keep coming out with 7 or 8 wins. And honestly, I think I'm leaning more towards 7 than 8. As much of a dynamic player as Kyler is, I just think the losses on this defense are going to be big. I think Kyler's a good player, but I just don't think that he can do enough. And I think that there's some level of like, not that Cliff Kingsbury's on the hot seat yet, but like if you look at the first coach fired market, I think he's like the 3rd or 4th choice. I wouldn't be surprised if they started off slow. Like I said, they're 2-6 or 3-5. Maybe you start to get some rumors about, is Kingsbury going to be at his coach, and this kind of goes downhill. And what we've seen in the Cliff Kingsbury, Kyler Murray era is basically insanely hot starts and then fading to an insane degree at the end of the season. It's kind of hard to get off to a super hot start with the schedule that they have. So if they do start off struggling and fade down the stretch, I think they're under 7.5 at plus 195 that I'm seeing right now. I think that's a really good bet at close to plus 200 odds. So I'm out on the Cardinals. I faded them a couple different ways. I played their under win total, played their alt under. If you want to play them to miss the playoffs too, that's fine. Yeah, I think I'm out on this team.
It feels like a team to me that has the potential to lose to some pretty bad teams, but also the potential to beat good teams.
Yeah, they definitely could.
So that's where I see an upside. That's where I'm kind of struggling with the 8.5. If it was 9.5, I would be all over it. So that's just kind of where I'm struggling with it. But
I don't want to look up the line for them week 4 at the Panthers. I didn't even like the Panthers in that game.
Yeah, I agree. So for you, obviously we know the answer for me. Cardinals or Vikings?
I would go Vikings. Definitely like the
good.
Vikings more than the Cardinals.
All right, good.
I'm not out on the Vikings. I'm just out on your insane belief in them to achieve like these ceiling outcomes. I think they're going to be a good team. They're going to win between 8 and 9 games. Like that.
I want to be clear that I just think the value on the Vikings odds to win the division and their win total is severely mispriced. I'm not saying that they're a lock to win the division. They're a better team than the Packers. The Packers to me have a much better defense than the Vikings. I think the Vikings have potential to have a better offense. So do with that what you will. And I just think the plus 300 for them to win the division that I got just seems way out of whack for me. So all right. So the Cardinals are like plus.
Somehow every division we talk about turns into a Vikings
because you act like I'm crazy fish. So do you think the Cardinals are just as likely to win this division as the Vikings are to win their division?
That's a good comparison. No, I do not.
No, because the Vikings pretty much just have to beat out the Packers because the Lions.
The Cardinals would have to beat out 2 teams.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
I agree.
And the Rams are also a better team than the Packers.
Yeah, they're pretty close.
Okay, so with that, what would you put the Vikings odds to win the division at?
To win the NFC West?
Yes. No, the NFC North. We're going back to the NFC North for this Vikings.
I already said I agreed with you. Their odds were
all right, did you bet it?
No, because I don't think that they can achieve that. I think the Packers' floor is just too high. If you want to bet the Vikings to make the playoffs, I'm fine with that. But I would
did
never
that
bet
too.
Them. I wouldn't bet them to achieve like these, like win the NFC, win the division, stuff like that. I just don't see the ceiling.
I just bet division, playoffs, and win total.
Kirk Cousins is a mediocre quarterback, and they're going to win a mediocre amount of games.
Top 10.
They do every year. All right, we're going to move on here. So now we're back in the NFC North. Let's talk about the Bears unders again. That was a good time. Can we just go back to that?
Yeah.
All right, let's go to another team that we might talk about some unders on. The Seattle Seahawks. Win total is at 5.5, minus 130 to the over. So that's been getting bet a little bit. Plus 500 to make the playoffs and 20-1 to win their division. Obviously lost quarterback Russell Wilson and linebacker Bobby Wagner. So arguably their two best players on the roster are gone. Also lost tight end Gerald Everett and tackle Dwayne Brown. Additions in the offseason, Drew Lock came over from Denver, brought Noah Fant, tight end, with him. And then they drafted offensive tackle Charles Cross, and Kenneth Walker, the running back out of Michigan State, will take over. Well, not take over. He'll join Rashad Penny in that backfield. So what are we thinking about the new look Seahawks offense? Pete Carroll stays, Russell Wilson goes. Drew Lock's there. How you feeling about the Seahawks?
Well, Geno Smith, I think, is going to end up starting.
You think so? I feel like the way they're talking about Drew Lock, he's going to be the starter. I mean, obviously, Geno Smith's still there. Like, if Drew Lock sucks, they can bring him in. But I'd be pretty surprised if Geno Smith started week 1.
All right. Well, I am happy to say that this was my first win total bet when they got released, whenever it was, a couple months ago, and I bet they're under 6 wins. This is a defense that has been getting torched by the pass for the last 2 years, and it looks like they could be even worse this year. They only had 34 sacks last year. Their run defense was pretty solid, but now you're losing Bobby Wagner.
Not anymore.
Yeah, so it's just they're going to be vulnerable at every level of the defense this year. And then on the other side of the ball, you have an offensive line that has been bottom 10 at protecting the passer over the last 2 seasons. And now you're potentially going to be starting 2 rookies at left and right tackle. So this team has disaster potential. I already bet the Broncos week 1 against them at minus 4.5. There's rumors that Jimmy G could potentially end up here, but there's still just Jimmy G. I was just kind of talking about how he kind of fit in that 49ers system, good run game, good defense. Now you're just going to be at a disadvantage in the trenches almost every game with this team, except maybe against the Falcons and Bears. So it's just this team. They're ranked amongst those worst teams in the league with the Falcons.
I got to be honest.
Texans.
So I also bet the Seahawks under. I'm with you. I got to be honest, though. If Jimmy Garoppolo signs here, like, I'm scared to death. Like, that's the one thing that's really holding me back. I really think that he makes a big difference. Well, it's not the greatest offensive line, but I still think Rashad Penny and Kenneth Walker, like, that's a really good running back duo. We know the Seahawks love to run the ball. I think they can establish the run. And you put him with DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Gerald Everett. Like, there's some, or no, Gerald Everett's gone. But you put him with Lockett and Metcalf. Like, I think that Jimmy Garoppolo can easily win 7. I don't know if I'll go 8. I think he could easily win 7 games with this roster if he comes here. I think he's a big upgrade over Drew Lock and Geno Smith.
So they definitely have a more favorable schedule than the other teams in the league or in the division. Sorry, but because they get the Giants thrown in there. They get the Jets thrown in there. So those are 2 easier matchups that the other
Falcons as well. Yeah, I mean, it's not easy, but yeah, it's a little bit easier than some of the other teams in this division.
But I don't. So Garoppolo definitely raises the floor and the ceiling for this team. But I still think with Garoppolo, there's a floor where they win 4 or 5 games.
But if I told you they had Garoppolo right now, would you still bet the under on 6 wins? I definitely would not.
Probably not, looking at their schedule. So Garoppolo to me he would give them the potential to maybe steal a game against a better team, but oh man, the offensive line and the defense is just hard for me to overlook. Like Jimmy Garoppolo is he's not a Russell Wilson where that stuff it obviously still matters, but Russ is good enough to kind of overcome some of that consistently and win games, and Jimmy G's just not that guy. So I think if you gave me a 6.5, if he was here, I think I might take the under on that.
Okay. Sounds like you're a little more down on Jimmy G than I am.
And they're still, with Jimmy G, I think they're still the clear worst team in this division. Even with Trey Lance in the 49ers, I still think the 49ers are a better team.
I might take a look at them in some games against the Cardinals with Jimmy G. I don't know that they're better, but I think if the market was still really down on them and they were like decent sized dogs, I think I would definitely like them against the Cardinals.
And the other thing is, it's not like he's coming over to like a great coaching staff that I think could. They don't.
True that.
You know what I mean? It's not like he's coming over a guy like Kyle Shanahan. We're like, oh, he's going to put him in a position to succeed and do this and do that. It's not that. That's the other aspect of it that I don't love this team. I'm not a big Pete Carroll guy, and I don't love the rest of the coaching staff. So I just don't think this team really has much of a ceiling, regardless of who's at quarterback. So. Where do you rank them right now? Assuming either, so you think Locke, where do you rank them among the Falcons, Bears, Texans?
I would say they're not in the bottom tier. So I would say they're ahead of the Texans, ahead of the Falcons, definitely ahead of the Bears. I'd probably put them in that next tier with like the Jets and Jaguars for me.
Really?
Like, I don't think they're competing for the worst record in the league.
Oh, I think that, we'll have to get to the AFC South, but I think the Jaguars are better than all those teams, or potentially
they could be. I think they have a higher ceiling, but I don't like median expectation. I think the Jaguars are pretty close to the Seahawks for me.
Yeah, I would say so. To me, like it's like the bottom tiers: Falcons, Bears, Texans, Seahawks, Jets, and possibly Jaguars.
So I moved the Jets and the Seahawks out of that bottom tier. I think they're a tier above that.
I don't see it. Why
they have more roster on their talent?
What do they
have?
Bears. When you say they have more talent, you're basically just referring to DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett.
And they're running. I like their running game. Like I know Pete Carroll's an idiot and tries to run the ball 100 times, but like that's okay when you have Rashad. But
behind a horrible offensive line that might be starting two rookies on the outside at left and right tackle.
Yeah, it's not great. I mean, I saw Rashad Penny run for like 200 yards a game the last 4 weeks of the season last year. And then, I mean, I guess it was with Russell Wilson, but still, I mean, the offensive line wasn't great then.
Yeah. I don't know. They're definitely they're playing the Falcons, Jets, so they have potential. They're going to be in the mix for that worst.
I don't think they are. I think their floor is like 4 or 5 wins.
Okay.
But we'll see.
All right.
Anything left to say on the Seahawks? Then I have a couple props I want to run by you.
Go for it.
All right. So I have 2 player props on the Arizona Cardinals. I think one of them might be my favorite. One of my favorites of the whole offseason.
Is it JJ Watt under sacks?
Oh, if we get that again, my God, that was my favorite one last year to cash so easily. I haven't seen any sack props yet outside of a couple rookies, but I'll keep my eye out for that one. Kyler Murray, do you want to guess? I don't know if you've seen this. What do you think his rushing touchdown season-long prop is at?
Okay, so the fact you're saying that, it's probably like 1 or 2 too high. So I'd say 7.5.
Exactly. It is 7.5. I believe it's -140. The under on DK, -130 on MGM. And I think the under is just one of my favorite bets of the whole offseason. I think 5.5 is the right number. Over the last 3 seasons, he has 4, 11, and 5 rushing touchdowns. So kind of all over the board. Obviously had a big spike year of 11 in 2020. But that year, he also had a poor backfield. He had Kenyon Drake and Chase Edmonds compared to last year when James Conner took over, who was the clear goal line back. You saw him steal a lot of those goal line touchdowns and came second in the league with 15 rushing touchdowns. We also have 2 straight years of data that shows that Kyler's rushing in the back half of the season has been a little bit less than the front half. And in the last 24 games, he's only ran for a total of 6 rushing touchdowns. And just to give some perspective of like getting 8 rushing touchdowns as a quarterback, that's only happened 6 times over the last 5 seasons. Jalen Hurts did it once, Kyler did it once, Cam Newton did it once, and Josh Allen did it twice. So like that's 5 years that includes Jalen Hurts, Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson, Cam Newton, Josh Allen, like all these running quarterbacks. It's only been done 5 times in the last 6 times in the last 5 years. So like that just tells you the status that we're talking about. And that's just his baseline right now, is 7.5. So I think the under is crazy good value. We've also seen him deal with multiple injuries over the last few years. So I think the offense takes a step back a little bit. And I think the under 7.5 is just easy money.
Yeah. So that is I definitely like the under, but yeah, he did have the ankle injury last year, which was part of the reason he wasn't running as much. And he's also not a Josh Allen, Cam Newton, Jalen Hurts type guy.
He gets yards more than touchdowns.
Yeah, he's not running quarterback dive from the 2 yard or like shotgun running dive up the middle.
Right, like Josh Allen is.
Yeah, he'll run the sweeps and stuff. And there's definitely a design plays for him around the goal line. But as long as James Conner's healthy, James Conner scored like 25 touchdowns last year. It felt like he went through a stretch of scoring in like 8 games straight. So given that they have that goal line guy, and now that they signed Murray to this long deal, I don't think they're going to be looking to really pound him in by the goal line. So yeah, that's definitely tick or two too high. So I'm with you. Tick or two too high. Yeah, tick.
Okay, a somewhat correlated prop, but not exactly. How do you feel about? I'm not quite as strong on this one, but I still think it's a little low. James Conner over 8.5 rushing touchdowns is -112 on FanDuel. So betting it over on a running back, that's a little bit scary, but like I said, finished second in the league last year with 15 rushing touchdowns, also had 12 back in 2018 with the Steelers for a couple injury riddled seasons. Like the injury concerns are there. Like he has dealt with injuries in the past. He only played 10 games in 2019, I think 12 the next year, but last year stayed healthy for pretty much the entire year, kind of was splitting with Chase Edmonds and took over that role towards the end of the season. Chase Edmonds is gone. He's now in Miami. All they brought in was Darrell Williams. So the backfield right now, James Conner, Eno Benjamin, and Darrell Williams. So it looks like this coaching staff trusts him. He's going to get more work than last season in a better situation. So, I mean, the fact that he could finish with 6 less rushing touchdowns than last year and you still cash the over, I was expecting this to be closer to like 10.5 based on his goal line role.
So I agree with you. And this was one of the first ones I actually looked at. And it was like right where I wanted it to be, but it's just so hard for me to bet overs in an NFL season, especially with a guy that has the injury risk.
Yeah.
So I completely agree. I love the number for him, but this is where you and I just differ completely, because I know you have your 75 player props in.
I'll bet smaller edges than
you said a ton weren't overs, but it's just betting the overs. Betting the overs from a season long perspective on
it's
player
tough.
prop. It's just so tough for me. So I agree with you that I love the number, and if he even plays 14
12
or 15,
games, 13,
14, so I'd feel good about it. But there's injury history there. Now he's going to be shouldering the load for that. Who is their backup running back this year?
Darrell Williams from the Chiefs. And then they also have Eno Benjamin, who will probably come in on like third downs here and there, but like they don't have much there.
So that's what I mean. So Connor is the guy.
Right, that's good and bad. It's good in the sense that he's
bad.
going to get all the work, but he could break down because he's getting all the work. So
yeah, and he's not. He has some wear and tear on him. He had some seasons in Pittsburgh where he definitely carried the load there. But yeah, so I like the number, I like the prop, but maybe I'm just a wuss from taking overs on player prop.
Maybe you're just smart and he'll get hurt in week 7. And
maybe
find out. All right. Anything left for you to say on the NFC West? Would you consider betting any of these teams to win the Super Bowl or anything like that? Or will you look at them during the season? And I don't bet a ton of Super Bowl winners before the season unless I see crazy value. But are there any teams you're going to be keeping an eye on?
I mean, there's no reason the Rams can't do it again. It's just more kind of like I said, that the depth kind of scares me. If you lose a guy or two on that D line, or even before they got like Odell last year and they lost Robert Woods, it seemed like there was kind of a void at that receiver position. And God forbid Cooper Kupp goes down, their whole offense might crumble. So, yeah, so that scares me a little bit. And I don't see the ceiling there with Trey Lance. And obviously we weren't high on the 49ers or the Seahawks.
Cardinals or Seahawks.
What did I say? 40.
You said Trey Lance. You talked about the Niners. Then you said we also weren't high on the Niners and the Seahawks.
Oh, yeah. Cardinals. Yeah. So, the Rams can do it again if they stay healthy. Other than that, I don't think anyone really has potential to win it.
Okay.
So do you have like since we're through the NFC now, do you have any takes on the overall NFC and who you think will win if you had to? Okay, so obviously we have the guys at the top. If you had to take that next tier team or surprise team to win the NFC, who would you take?
I mean, at the top for me, it has to, I can't even answer that. It's the Bucks because I just have too much money on them from the Brady thing.
Yeah, so.
All right. If I had to pick a team outside of the top, man, it's tough. It's just really tough to make. I feel like, honestly, I would have to go with the Niners, just thinking that like Trey Lance really hits a home run, because like the Eagles, like I love Jalen Hurts, but I just don't see him doing that in the playoffs. I'm not in on the Cowboys in the playoffs. I don't think the Saints have enough high-end talent to do it in the playoffs. Kirk Cousins not getting it done in the playoffs. I'm not betting on Aaron Rodgers in the playoffs. Like I'm running out of teams pretty quickly here. If it's not the Rams or the Bucks, for me, I think it has to be the Niners.
Okay.
Where would you go?
I don't see it. And I don't like the odds for the 49ers at plus 750 either. Fourth best odds to win the conference.
I don't think it's enough right now. I'd probably wait and see maybe if they get off to a slower start, but it's tough to make a case for any of these lower end. Like the NFC just doesn't have the depth that the AFC does, where you can make a legitimate case for 7 or 8 teams. The NFC is just tough. Like I like the Saints a lot from a regular season perspective, but like, am I really making the case that they're going to go beat the Bucs and the Rams en route to the Super Bowl?
Yeah,
probably not.
Yeah.
So do you have a team that you would do? Is it the Giants?
It's the Vikings.
No. Oh, I thought you were going to say it was the Giants.
Look, and it's, I'm not even joking with this Viking stuff. I know you and Dave think I'm crazy. I just think they are a team that has, so the Bucs, we feel really good, are going to win the division. Yes, they're my clear favorite to win. The Vikings are a sneaky team that could win the division, and then round one, you maybe end up playing like a team that just sneaks in, like say the Giants surprise everyone, get a wild card spot. Then you play them. They could play the Eagles in the first round. That they're a winnable. If they sneak in, and even if they sneak in as a wild card team, I think they could win a game. I think they have that type of potential, and where they're priced right now, like they're priced. The Cardinals are plus 1,400. The Vikings are plus 2,000 on FanDuel right now. To me, that's, you even said it
to
yourself.
Win what? The NFC?
To win the NFC. You even said it yourself. You like the Vikings better than the Cardinals. So they're way ahead of them in terms of odds, and the Saints are also ahead of them. So I think I just think they're mispriced. Maybe I'll be crazy by the end of the season, but I really think the Vikings have that type of potential, especially if it's one team in the division they have to overcome. And that's what I'm saying. Even if the Packers are clearly a better team, things can go wrong. God forbid Aaron Rodgers gets hurt. You're not relying on 3 or 2 other teams for stuff to go wrong for them. I just think the odds for them in just every aspect are just way off for me.
Python got some. They regress a little bit this year.
I'm sorry?
The Packers, the Python. Pythagorean win.
Python, is that a real thing?
Might catch up to him this year. No, it's a real thing. Yeah,
they could. Python. Yeah, they were. This
could be the year.
It could. And the Vikings pull out a few more of those 1-score games. Next thing you know, they win the division by 1 game. They're playing the Eagles in round 1. And
all right, from Jeff and Rue, that was a great wrap on the NFC. We will be back next week with the AFC, where we will hopefully not have any discussion about the Minnesota Vikings.
Oh, they'll come up.
What division are we going to start with? We go back to the East, the AFC East.
I think AFC East.
They don't have any question marks. Yeah, we got all the. Who else is in that division? Oh, yeah, the Dolphins. Yeah, okay. All right, so we will start with the AFC East next week. Any questions, comments, or concerns, hit us up on Twitter at BetRightPod. Leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Smash the like button on YouTube. From Jeff and Rue, we are the Bet Right Sports Betting Podcast, because every time you bet with us, you bet right.